Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the November 4th workshop at Georgetown ISD. Mr. Chair, today we are going to work through this agenda. There is no public comments, as far as I know. And then on today's agenda, we have a high priority campus update with Mitchell and Pearl. We have a federal grants update. Ms. McWilliams will present that. And then Landon Huffman will present the first of many rezoning conversations with draft number 1. So we are going to start with Pearl Elementary. I'm going to hand the microphone over to Dr. Jennifer Smith.
Good evening. Good evening. Can you hear me?
I can. Why don't you try another one?
Testing.
Try this one. Yeah, try James. Sorry, this one. Didn't mean to take it.
Oh, good. I have nothing to say.
Right.
I'll speak loud.
There you go.
Good evening.
Hey.
Good evening. Good evening, Board of Trustees, Dr. Padilla, everyone out in the audience. Today I'm going to present Pearl Elementary's turnaround plan. So back in July, when we met with my instructional team, we came up with our Pearl commitments, instructional priorities, and although we grew 9 points, we went from a 57 to a 66, just 4 points away from that C. Our goal is to be a 73 by the end of the school year. So I'm going to briefly just talk about this chart here, what it means to us, starting from left to right. So as a team, we talk about what does this mean for our students? What kind of instructional strategies do we want to see each day in the classrooms? So we made our notes again as a team, and then we talked about what does this mean for teachers? If we want for students to be practicing these instructional strategies on a daily basis, what do teachers need to do? Which in my presentation, I will talk a little bit more deeply about that. And then we talked about what does it mean for the instructional leadership team, the instructional coach, the principal, myself. What does it mean for the campus principal, the assistant principals? And then finally, we talked about what do we need from central office to ensure that we gain that seat by the end of the school year. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about our instructional strategy. This is what we're prioritizing. So we're looking at high quality student tasks. So we're ensuring that in every math classroom, teachers are using this research-based strategies to develop responses. So that includes that we're seeing manipulatives such as objects, base symbol blocks, graphic organizers. We're ensuring that students are using the 3 reads model. This is a strategy for students to solve math word problems. We're asking them to solve these math problems in multiple ways, also ensuring that they're justifying their answer. For reading, we're having our students engage in rigorous tests. Students are practicing reading, listening, speaking, and writing on a daily basis. Again, using the HGIM, that's our highly quality instructional materials, which is SOLIS. For writing, we're practicing our ECRs. Students are providing a well-written response using text evidence. Again, we're ensuring that all students are practicing ECRs across the entire content. For observation, growth, and feedback, we're ensuring that our teachers are receiving coaching cycles. This is going to help grow their capacity. Again, our administrators are doing a bite size of coaching tips and then maybe some next steps to coach them up. At this time, all administrators are highly visible in our classrooms. Up to this point, we have 219 walk-ins noted and 20 forms. We're using an observation tracker tool and a coaching tracker. This tracker ensures that, like us as admin, we're not overstepping, overlapping the classrooms that we're visiting. We're ensuring that we're hitting all of our tier 3 teachers. And the coaching tracker, we're ensuring that all administrators are coaching teachers. We're looking at them, what's going to be that small bite size that we're going to give that coaching step, and with that, what's the next step with the feedback. Finally, for timely response data, we're using in our PLC the backward design model. That means that our teachers are looking at the common assessments so that we know what students need to know either by the end of the lesson or the end of the assessment. Then we're using daily feedback. Again, our students are receiving feedback daily to clarify their misconceptions. So again, as teachers are teaching a lesson, the teachers are clarifying this on the spot, or it could be in tier 1 instruction. We're using win time and small group instruction during tier 1. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about win time and what does that look like at Pearl. So this is win time. It means what I mean. to ensure that all learners receive targeted supports and differentiation. All of our students receive for 15 minutes targeted intervention, whether it's enrichment or accelerated instruction. Our teachers actually get together, look at the data, and as a team, they actually group them. So here's like a little sample of our data tracker, what it looks like. Again, this is a very collaborative effort. All the teachers look at the skills, they group the students, and based on the skills that they need, all teachers are working with them. Once the student masters the skills, again, the teacher collaboratively work together and put that student in a different group. Again, this is called What I Need. We're using a winning tracker, as you can see, that's an example on the presentation, how we're keeping track of our student groups. And then finally, we're using student goal sheets. So we want to ensure that students actually know their goals and they're actually monitoring their progress. At Pearl, we're also practicing our instructional coherence through POCs. So I'm going to explain a little bit what does instructional coherence mean. So basically, it means that our teachers are using highly qualified instructional materials. They know how they're going to teach the lesson, and there's an assessment that's aligned to the lesson. So kind of think about it like like a triangle. HQIM, teachers know how they're going to teach the lesson, and the students are going to have an aligned assessment. So it all is coherent and it's all aligned. So through our POCs, we're asking teachers to internalize these lessons. So I'm going to give you an example, and I want you to imagine what does internalization mean. So kind of imagine that you're about to go into your cookbook, and you're looking at a recipe that you've never cooked before, right? So as you're looking at the recipe, you're looking at the ingredients, you're looking at the tools, you're looking at, hey, do I have these ingredients in my pantry or not? Then after that, you realize, oh, I need to go to the grocery store, go purchase these items, right? You go back into your cookbook, and again, you're studying it, you're looking at it. At that moment, you're internalizing your recipe, right? Because you've never cooked this recipe before. So as you're internalizing, you're asking yourself, okay, what do I need to pre-cook? What do I need to prepare? How am I going to heat up the oven? Again, internalizing. Well, our educators do the exact same thing. They have to internalize the lessons. They have to look at the materials. They have to look at the student exit. They have to look at the text. The teacher has to study. Where am I going to pause to give this instruction? Where do I feel students are going to have a misconception or I'm going to have to clarify? Again, this is called internalization of the lesson, and we're doing this together in a POC. In addition to that, we're doing a note and show chart. That means our teachers are working together and they're telling us, tell me in a T-chart. If we're practicing this particular skill, tell us everything that this student needs to know for this skill. So teachers will say things like, oh, he needs to know how to multiply, he needs to know what a divisor is, and so forth, right? And then in the show part, we ask them, please show us an exemplar. If the student masters the skill, I want you to show me and tell me, what does that look like? The teachers work it out together, and I'm like, okay, so when I walk into a classroom, this is what a master looks like. This is an exemplar. So again, we're using those note charts so that, again, we can become master experts on student learning. And then, of course, finally, we're using our student exemplars. So teachers are creating actually these exemplars. So for instance, I'll have teachers say, I want you to look at a writing rubric, and I want you to write, as a first grader, what does it look like at a level 1, at a level 2, at a level 3, and so forth. So again, teachers are practicing, they're becoming experts in their expertise of teaching so that we understand where students need to be. At this time, I'm just going to pause for 1 second. Board of Trustees, do you have any questions for me?
I do. I don't think I need a mic. I love your detailed explanation of this. Thank you. How do you feel it's working?
Just like any process, this is new, the whole internalization and using HQIM. So it is working, but it's a progress. As a leader, I do have to guide teachers. We do have to ask those questions, again, to ensure they really are internalizing the lesson and just having the conversations. And again, it's very collaborative. We try to ensure that it's in a very safe place where they feel vulnerable to say, you know what, I really truly don't understand. Or, can you come model this lesson for me? Again, we're there to support them. Like I said, it's not perfect, but we are getting there. But I have to tell you that in our POCs, it's very collaborative. So I can see that any Pearl will meet its goal.
Thank you.
for you is the biggest challenge?
Will you repeat her question so
Yeah,
the
that's
microphone
good.
can
Thank
hear it, and then we'll answer it?
And so Ms. Mulligan asked, what is right now my biggest challenge? And to be really transparent, and our central office knows right now, it is student discipline. So right now, that is what we're working on, is ensuring that we do get that special education tier 3 behavior under control, and really giving the supports that they need so that our students can be successful. So to answer your question, it's going to be right now discipline.
Thank you. Be honest with me.
My question is probably related to Mr. Blankenship's. I'm curious, with your instructional strategies, how are you monitoring, like what data are y'all looking at to monitor these? Or Dr. Spears, maybe, how are you monitoring? What are you looking at to monitor how folks are doing against perhaps your chart here?
So the question is, how am I monitoring instructional strategies at Full Elementary? Is that correct?
Yeah, and like how do you know when you're making progress or you're not?
So we have various modes that we're monitoring. So it could be again our common assessments. For instance, we are looking at map data. We have map data from the beginning of the year. We haven't taken the MOI, but again, as a team and as a school, we know where we're at. We're also looking at common assessments. Common assessments are uploaded into TFAR. They're going to be uploaded into Euphoria. Once that's uploaded, as a team, we are going to be analyzing. We're going to look at basically a diagnostic assessment. We're going to look at what is our 3 biggest needs and what are 3 biggest celebrations that we can, share with our staff. So that's how we're tracking and monitoring.
Dr. McWilliams supervises the school. Do you have anything that you would add to what Jennifer shared?
We just continue to look at the data in their PLCs by grade level in terms of the TFAR data. And the beginning of the year data looks good in comparison to where we were a year ago. And then hopefully making adjustments with what is not in that we're drilling down in those PLCs to what we are having the problems with. I know that Dr. Spears and her team are working hard on that.
Just one more question. Common assessments, because you just alluded to common assessments. Is that something that is developed by the school or the common assessments developed by the district?
Heather, do you want to come over here so you can tag team that? But go ahead and start answering, and then Heather will chime in.
At this moment, we are.
Will you repeat the question so we can?
Yes, so Ms. Jen Morgan asked, how are we assessing and who's creating these assessments, these common assessments? And I'm going to say just on our behalf, I want to thank the teaching and learning team because they are helping us with this. Again, our principal team, we want to make sure that our assessments are streamlined. Again, we want to ensure that as an entire GISD, that we're working together to see what are those trends, what does that look like for GISD. So not just for any Pearl, but it's actually strengthening the entire organization.
Thank you so much for that question. So this year we have the new HQIM office, and as we've been implementing that HQIM, the high quality instructional material, we are taking the assessments, looking at them and deciding, is this rigorous enough? Is this aligned to what we know the standard says and what we know students need to know and be able to do? And then our instructional coaches have done a fabulous job of looking at those by grade level and making sure that we're making tweaks where necessary and then enhancing the writing piece because we know we need more extended constructed response and short constructed response because that's how it shows up on the state assessment, but we also want students writing for the art and craft of teaching writing. So there's that part of it. The other side of it is the teaching and learning team has written short assessments for the end of each unit, and those are put into a system called TFAR that's provided to us by TEA. Those are very short. The elementary principals, their PLC came up with the idea of let's have some benchmark assessments every about 3 to 4 units. We've developed those assessments and those go into a system called Eduphoria where we're able to then log into Eduphoria and see as a system how are we doing and look at it by campus and then also by different student groups. So when we talked to you about accountability back in the fall, we were talking about domain 3, where we look at all the different groups, student groups that show up, emergent bilingual, special education, and then by demographics. So we're also able to see, are there gaps that are starting to exist, or do we need to pay special attention over here? It sort of helps guide each campus as they make progress and implement intervention plans for students.
Do you have a question? Yeah, I'll add at the end.
I'm curious, Dr. Spears, you mentioned your challenge around discipline.
Talking to the mic, I can't hear you.
Hello, yeah, okay, let me try again. Pearl has outstanding students, outstanding families. And when you look at the makeup of the students that go there, I think we would all agree that we should ensure Pearl has the support it needs for all the learners there to get what they need. So this may not be something to necessarily need to respond to now, but I would be curious. It's awesome that you made the 9 points of growth last year, and I know folks are working really hard, but wondering what other supports does the school need to make sure all of those kids are getting the support they need? Because I know the students, the families care deeply. So I don't know if you have a response. I don't know what exactly what the question is, but I think it's something we should consider.
I can, just to respond, I feel like the team really is supporting me. Central office is very present, they're very visible. They're constantly walking, visiting teachers. I have Monica Myers, Stacey Sylvester, the entire team. They were here today, walking classrooms, giving me feedback on how to improve instruction. And if they see anything, again, with discipline, right away I ask, I need someone to come and observe this, give us some help, support on how to support this teacher. Right away they will send me the help. So I want to say they're very supportive.
This may have already been addressed before I got stuck in traffic. This is tier 1, correct? What does tier 2 look like? And do we have kids who are in a tier 2 plus area?
Yes. That is. So that's a good question. So in our Pearl Elementary, we are coaching our teachers to do tier 2 instruction. So that instruction, that intervention that you're talking about, it occurs during tier 1. So when you're looking at the cycle, the I do, we do, you do, that's the lesson cycle, what we're instructing and teaching teachers is that during that independent, when students are working independently, again, they're showing us that productive struggle, that's when the teacher pulls a small group and based on their needs, again, whether it's common assessments, in-class math, that's what they're teaching. Again, just a small instant bit, giving students that strategy, what they need. They also have to progress monitor that to ensure that once the students master it, right, then you pull the next group in.
So the follow-up question to that is, who is doing tier 3, and I would assume the interventionists are doing tier 3, and how is that, other than that the teacher is teaching tier 2, how is that different for those students, and what do those numbers look like when you're in tier 3 with the number of interventionists that you have on staff?
So just to clarify the question so the audience can hear, you're asking about, we know what tier 2 looks like with our teachers, and you're asking what does that look like for our tier 3 students? These are the teachers who are actually giving that tier 3 instruction, is that correct?
Yes,
So
interventionists.
So that's our interventionists, our special education, you have our dyslexia, and again, at tier 3, it's very intensive intervention. I mean, this can go for 45 minutes to 50 minutes, very intensive. As you know, at Pearl Elementary, we are 30% special education, but I do have to say that part of our strength is closing the gaps. In our accountability system, we landed at a D, We are working towards getting a C in domain 3 for closing the gaps. And I truly believe that with all the efforts and all the teachers collaborating together in the POCs, working with HQIM, internalizing the lesson, I believe that we're going to be successful.
So our content interventionists are delivering that tier 3 instruction so that we can address anything that might be below grade level, bring students up to grade level, and then if there's any additional tier 2 support that needs to be put in place. I also want to qualify that reteaching something is tier 1. All students have the ability to have anything retaught to them, and then as we start to see gaps that start to exist by standards so that we can identify students by name and by need, and the need would be an intervention standard, then we'll start to pull small groups within the classroom, and that'll start to be that tier 2 work.
Trustees, I have a little bit to wrap up here, but do you have any other questions? Okay, so my turn. First of all, I appreciate the work Dr. Spears is doing for Pearl. To speak plainly, Pearl has been an underperforming campus based upon state accountability for more than a couple of years. And previous to Dr. Spears, they were an F-rated campus. She has moved them X amount of points up to a D, and 9 points up to a D. And there's work taking place to make it to C category. But for any of our principals here that are trying to combat underperformance, it's not because people aren't working hard. It's the successful implementation of systems, consistent systems to ensure performance. Now, you've asked questions about how are we ensuring that this is working. To be honest, until we do get that middle of the year benchmarking, it's hard to be confident. It's about saying the work is taking place. So let me give you a sports analogy. Everything she's talked about here in terms of these charts and the conversations teachers are having in PLC. It's like watching practice. Practice looks really good. And our BOY data, that was like our first scrimmage. We need to see what this second scrimmage looks like to get a sense of, is it all coming together? And once we have those big data points, we're going to have this indication like the work is taking place and it's moving forward. You bring up a really strong point in terms of supporting teachers with a very different campus than, honestly, what a lot of other schools in Georgetown look like. And I'll just speak plainly to you, just as your superintendent. I don't care what it takes. We're not going to have a D or F school in Georgetown. And so, when we look at Pearl, just last week, I was visiting with some of the behavior staff, and they mentioned how they had this position, a paraprofessional position last year that really helped to support teachers in the classroom, and we got it done. We just took care of it. And so we don't want little things that are stressors on teachers in terms of being able to address the needs of students to get in the way of a school that is trying to turn around years of underperformance. And so we want our teachers, or our people working closest to kids, to feel like they can focus their energy on this important work of making sure students are academically successful. Okay, now it is time for Melanie Moore and Mitchell's presentation.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for having me tonight. I'm going to present our turnaround plan. So we have 3 buckets that we are focusing on this year for our turnaround plan. Daily dose of high-quality instructional materials, building teacher capacity through observation and feedback cycles, and data-driven instruction. So within those, we have 3 points that we're focusing really hard on this year. For high-quality instructional materials, we've put professional learning opportunities in place that's focused on instructional strategies, and I'll get into each of these points on another slide. Student-centered learning targets and criteria for success, so building those exemplars out. Every time we start a new unit or a new modular that we're working through with math and reading. And then students are demonstrating their learning through discourse with each other, not so much the adult to the child. They learn more from each other than they ever do from an adult. And then showing their thinking. Building teacher capacity, coaching and feedback cycles for every adult in the building and every student in the building. That starts with me, working with Dr. Mack and Heather and some of the other people that come in and support us, all the way down to my sweet teacher that signed his contract the day before school started. So all of us are in a constant cycle of learning and growth. Same thing for the kids. Every single kid, it doesn't matter what their needs are, they are in a constant cycle of growth. Feedback is focused on bite-sized, actionable steps with follow-up dates for when we're going to come back and visit the teacher and look for this particular bite-sized chunk. They know what we're looking for, it's never a surprise. And then observational data is used to identify common needs across our campus that is really going to target in on needs for the greater campus, and that's facilitated through the conversations that my admin team and instructional coach have every single day. Data-driven instruction, we have collaborative data meetings to analyze disaggregated data. The district provides that for us, but we drill down even further because since we are a D school, we have subgroups that need additional supports that some others don't need. Knowing those subgroups are great, but I need to know who those kids are in that subgroup so that we can ensure that we're giving them every bit of what they need. And then consistent data cycles that are aligned with district assessments. So, oops, sorry, I'm clicking on mine. There we go. So diving into high quality instructional materials, us doing that is going to lead to some really great results, and we've seen some of these already. Improved teacher effectiveness and efficacy. We've already seen higher instructional quality with all of our teachers, and there's purposeful student-to-student discourse. I'll tell you about a sweet story with the students on the right in just 1 second. Higher student engagement. We've seen gains in student growth and achievement for student performance. We had the first student graduate from our Literacy First program from the whole district. So, and that student graduated very fast, so we were very proud of that. The picture on the left are some of our sweet first graders just having a great conversation about what they're reading in our SAVIS material. And then the group of students on the right are some of our students that have some intervention time. Our instructional coach came in, who has a fantastic relationship with them, and they wanted to show off. They were so excited about the progress they've made during intervention. The work that is there are additional problems that they wrote themselves just to show off. And then they swapped real quick, they checked each other's work, gave really good comments about, I don't think this is quite right, you need to look at how you added or subtracted here. And they did that on their own. So the kids are wanting and looking for ways that they can engage with each other more than with the adults. And they're looking for that positive feedback from each other, which is what we want them to be doing. And then they got really cool rewards that nobody else in the school has yet, so they were super stoked about that. Building teacher capacity. Like I said before, all of us are learners. So us going through these cycles of feedback are going to ensure that all of our teachers are receiving professional learning opportunities that are focused on not only the identified needs of the campus, but what do I need as an individual that is going to just level up my rigor of teaching and be able to reach more kids more effectively and a lot quicker. Like I said, all of our teachers are receiving that coaching to upgrade their individual practice, and instruction is going to be strong into the rigor of the teams across the campus. So just some examples of what I have here are third grade teachers working really diligently through what is an end of unit progress for our students, what is that going to look like? And my third grade team has the least amount of expertise and experience as teachers, and they're the ones that I think are digging in and diving in the most. On the top right, one of my math teachers in 5th grade is supporting and driving vertical planning once a month for math. And that's for pre-K through 5th grade. Everyone attends and everyone is digging in on what does math look like and what do our kids need to be able to do to show success pre-K 5. Everybody knows what everybody needs to do, so there's no question about what should they be coming with when they come to the next grade level. Like everybody else, we also have our accountability map. Ours is focused on math. The level up that we at Mitchell are doing is every month. Every single one of my teams, from SPED to ILC, BCS, pre-K all the way through 5th grade, my special area teachers, they review their accountability map and they add to it. If we've already accomplished the goal, they cross it out, they leave it there so we can see our progress. But if it's still something that we're working on, we're leaving it and adding to it another color. So that's when you can see, I hope you can see there's 3 colors there so far. There's black, red, and blue. Colors don't mean a thing, it's color preference. But it's a living document. So I want our teachers to make sure that they can visibly see all of the hard work that they're doing and not just have this be another checklist, another thing that Melanie's decided we need to try out this year. And our last focus is that data-driven instruction. All of our teachers monitor student progress regularly, and we adjust every single day based on real-time data, real-time evidence. So we're not waiting until the TFAR results come out. We're not waiting until we get our MOI data next go round. We are looking every single day and making those adjustments. Our teachers receive that feedback when we come in the classroom, but our students are also receiving that feedback on classroom performance. How did we do as a whole class with today's lesson, but then also Melanie, we need to work on this and we're going to work on that together. And then our students are setting goals for their progress, and there's an example of that in the bottom left. We do have collaborative PLC meetings centered around data, that beautiful rainbow wall. I go and gaze at it every single day, just looking for changes, looking for an idea to spark. How can we move our kids more? And our PLCs are looking at that too. We analyze those results, we determine root causes and misconceptions, try to head those off at the pass as best we can. And then we plan intervention and enrichment tasks and strategies using our high-quality instructional materials, but we also bring in our GT teacher. All of our SPED teachers attend these meetings because they're involved in our growth as well. So SPED teachers are great to help us with the kids that need that little boost from underneath. Our GT teacher is pulling not only the GT kids, she's pulling those kids that have proven already that they understand the material and they need that level up and a little bit more rigor on that end. And that's all I have for you. So, do y'all have any questions for me?
Just say something. I don't know that it's a question.
It's on.
Okay, I don't know if it's a question, but it's gotta be a big lift to come into a district first year and to come to this level of work. And so just wanna commend you for hopping in there and trying to learn a staff and everything that comes with being a first year in a building, so.
Can I respond to that? I have an amazing team.
Good.
I was blessed, I lucked upon them. Most everybody that's there, I have to hire some people, but my admin team is strong. My IC is super strong. Everybody from my front office staff to every single teacher and the subs I have come in the building, they love our kids. And our parents love our kids. The kids love everybody. So everybody's working towards a collective goal. I didn't do anything. I just came in, I said, this is what we need to do, I will help you do it. I'm in every single PLC, I'm teaching. So it's important. I want them to be successful, and I'm very transparent about the things that are going on. I presented this plan to them yesterday. I asked them, what do you want me to change? Because it's theirs, it's not mine. So I think they bought into the wackiness of Melanie. I want it to be fun, but we have a lot of work to do and a heavy load, and everybody's all in for it.
But you were leading that cost. Yeah. Don't shortchange yourself.
All right, trustees, seeing no other questions, we're going to move forward to federal grants.
Thank you for letting me talk about federal grants. I'm going to stand up if that's okay. First of all, I want to say that it is a privilege and an honor to serve with these two ladies and to have the oversight at Pearl and Mitchell. And I believe with all my heart, under the Dr. Pettiville's leadership in putting those 3 instructional priorities forward this summer, that you will see Pearl at a 73 or above its goal, and you will see Mitchell at a 75 or above its goal. They went up last year, it's going to go up and it's going to be out. I believe that with all my heart, and we're seeing that work. So let's talk about my favorite subject in town. That would be federal grants. So in terms of federal grants for 25-26, there's really 3 that we talk about. The ESSA, the Every Student Succeeds Act, is still around. That provides the additional resources to campuses, supporting instruction, interventionists, paraprofessionals, and materials, and promotes equity to high-quality learning for all students. And then we have the idea of the Special Education Act, and then the CTE funding that we get through the Carl Perkins Act. So let's talk first of all about ESSA. Title I is where Title I-A is where we get that big chunk of money for ESSA. Title I Part A, this is the supplemental money that we get to support students who, I'll talk more about that in a minute, exactly what it does. The supplemental, Title I-A is the big chunk. So if you're looking at these Title I Part A, Title I Part D, and so forth, you might say, well, Rhonda, what's up? It's fall 24 and then final 25 and the current. So let me explain about that real quickly. So in the fall, like this time last year, Title II Part A, for example, was at $268,231, and then it went to almost $300,000. That second column was carryover money that we had from the previous year that got it added on, and so we spent it. And so you say, okay, well, where are we Rhonda right now? Well, you can see in the far right-hand column, for example, looking at Title II Part A, it's at $319,831 for this year. We're not going to have carryover this year. We're probably going to have very little to no carryover because we're spending, okay? But that's where those numbers come from. Then let's kind of break it down and start with the $1.2 million for Title I Part A. So Title I Part A is the resources that come from our kids who are the schools that have the high concentrations of students from low-income families. This is our supplemental money to our low-income families, where we're getting instructional support, professional development, family community engagement, and extending the learning opportunities is a lot of it, the tutoring is for we're getting this, what we're using the Title I Part A money. So we want to take a look at where Title I Part A comes from and how it's broken down. So we get an amount. We get an amount for Title I Part A, and then it's broken down into the campuses that are 40% or more in terms of free or reduced lunch or economically disadvantaged children. And so you can see they're up here where we are with these this year. And some have changed since last year. Our highest level is at Pearl with 79% eco-divs, and then all the way back down to Village, barely making it into Title campus at 40%. Title I Part D is next. So Title I Part D it's worded as providing help to the students that are neglected or delinquent. I'll be quite honest with you, this is our money, about $111,563 that goes to the STEP program. to help the children who are at the STEP program is primarily where this goes. And giving us transition services, the academic support, and the much needed at the STEP program, the social emotional behavior support, and professional development. Tara Stewart at STEP manages this particular part of Title. Title II, this is through the teaching and learning, and this is...
Rhonda, small, as a question.
Oh, the question about the Title I.
Yes, ma'am.
Are these particular teachers that are on those campuses that their salary is coded to this account? Or are these additional people that will be brought in later on in order to handle small groups?
Good question. Especially paraprofessionals, many of them are part or all of their salary is coded to this. Interventionists, some of it is coded. Even like Erica Galindo, one of the multilingual services, part of her salary and so forth is coded with this already.
Okay.
Does that answer?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Thank you.
Rhonda, while we're on the topic of Title I, if you saw the slides of the schools, you could probably just guesstimate that, gosh, we have some middle schools that would easily qualify as Title I, and 40% is our threshold. And so as a district, we've made the decision to only have some of our elementary schools qualify because the pot of money doesn't grow as you add more schools. As you add more Title I schools, you just divide the pot by more pieces, if that makes sense.
And we thought that it could be best utilized at the elementaries. Title II, Part A, quickly, this is teaching and learning. It's the professional development, predominantly the professional development for teaching and learning that is used with the Title II, Part A. We got about 320,000 there. Title III, Part A is the ELA, the English Language Acquisition. And this is providing funds, about $240,500 for our EB students. And this is the professional learning, the language support, family engagement, and program support. This is run by the Director of Multilingual, this particular part. And it goes, I want to show you the slide and remind you that 19% of GISD students are identified as EB students. And you can see it by grade level here, starting with 209 at pre-K and then on up to our entire number being 2,672 kids who are taking advantage of this part of Title. And then you can see below the 30 languages are represented in our schools. Spanish is number 1. And then we get into about 24,000 for our immigrant students to help a little with these students as well. In terms of the language and support, of course, the family and community engagement, which is so important, and the student integration into the school system and in the professional development. Title IV is sort of a supplement, but they're all supplements, but this is for our, to help our program STEP kind of go above and beyond for a well-rounded education. For example, Ballet Folklorica is supported somewhat by this. The biggest chunk of Title IV Part A, honestly, goes to help students in the high schools, each high school, that are taking the very expensive AP tests. But we do look at some fine arts programs as well and help supplement as much as we can with the Title IV Part A. Then we go into the special ed, and that's broken into 2 groups. The big chunk, of course, is with IDEA B, the formula for special education. And you can see this year, that's about $2.3 million with that. And then the preschool, about $23,000. And with the IDEA B, and this is used heavily for salaries, materials, shared services, contracted services. This is where we get the regional day school for the deaf tuition. And then student placement in residential facilities if we have to do that. This is a title fund that helps with that, and it's quite a bit of money. And this is looking at kids from the age of 3 up to 21. And in the preschool, about $24,000, but this goes to salaries to help for our children who are 3 to 5 with disabilities, and we can help a little bit with this particular title fund. Takes us to CTE, the Carl Perkins, about 103,000 this year. That's managed by Bretton Schultz, and it's a good amount of money. It doesn't go to salaries, but it's going to help make a more rounded and a better CTE experience for our children in CTE, with career exploration and professional development for CTE staff, academic school, integrating the academic skills into the CTE program, and the evaluation of the CTE program. And I know that Bretton really does a good job with this and running this one. That concludes it. If you want me to back up to anything, or if you have any questions, I'll be happy to let Dr. Petterbill help me answer.
I think I have two.
Yes, ma'am.
One, for our Title I, I think it applies just to the Title I money. Do we distribute that? Like, do we centrally make decisions about that, or do campus principals get to make decisions about?
That's a fabulous question. And so you get this amount, okay? And then there's a spreadsheet that was handled by Tiffany last year before she retired and set up for bi-campus. And we look at, and so she looked at, I had her explain it to me all. She looked at, first and foremost, in terms of Title I, who has the highest level, which campus has the highest level of ecosystem. So she gave a higher rating to Pearl. And then we went on down from that. And then she looked at other factors from there. But by and large, it was determined by the number of eco-disadvantaged by campus. The principals don't determine it. Then we give the money to the principals and they spend the money. Does that answer
Yeah,
that?
that's super helpful.
Okay.
And then, I think at one point in the year, there was a moment where a lot of districts were wondering about if the title money and variety parts of the title money were going to come to us, to the districts. I'm curious if we're thinking about kind of lessons learned from that in case it were to happen again. I certainly hope not.
That's a
But
great
do you have any
question.
perspective?
That's a great question, and I'm sure he's going to answer. Keeping in mind that the title funds are absolutely what we call supplemental. They take, for example, if you took Mitchell and the title funds that are given to Mitchell, anything else that's at Mitchell and everywhere else, it's not supplemental. But we supplement Mitchell because of the number of kids here. And so it would be a big concern for the underprivileged kids and so forth. So I want to make sure everybody understands the supplemental part of it, that it goes above, the title is used to go above and beyond. But yeah, have we thought about a plan B? I think Dr. Petterbill.
Yeah, if you look at the total for all the title funds, it's about $2.2 million, so there's really no way around it. As a district, if title funds cease to flow from the federal government to Georgetown ISD, we would have to figure out how do we sacrifice part of that $2.2 million, fund different positions that were partially funded with title funds, and then everything else in between. It would represent a deficit to us.
It would be a concern, for sure. Great question. Anything else? Yes, ma'am.
Is it from the title funds that a lot of the principals in the springtime or at some point will hire someone to come in for extra support for those kids that
You
are
bet.
continuing to struggle? And
You
is that
bet.
where the money comes from?
Yes, ma'am. The biggest part of it, you got tutoring during the day from like retired teachers and so forth, is coming from the title funds.
Has that started yet as far as you know?
Yes.
I thought so. Okay. Great.
Anything else? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Fast forward to my part. I want to first apologize for the microphone clunkiness. We will make that right for Danielle and we'll pack, I promise you. But feels like we're doing okay now, so I'll do my best to repeat questions.
Before Landon presents, I would just say, as this is our first rezoning discussion, as a board, rezoning is probably the most complicated and sensitive topic we take on. It involves where everyone's children goes to school. It involves changing schools. And so as we do that with do this with a lot of consideration, careful forethought. You know the process to continue listening over the course of the next several months. So I appreciate all the work Landon is helping lead, and here is draft number one.
Draft number one. We won't keep all the way forward. Teammates all have pen and paper in hand. We're going to capture all of your thoughts. Just a couple logistical notes. I did bring a laser pointer only to realize they don't work on new lines. So it eats the red light, so I'll be probably hopping up and awkwardly pointing at the screen. You also have a larger format printout that I would prefer you refer to as opposed to the slide printout, because I think you'll see that they're clear pictures there. But they follow it, so I'll be sure to make sure you have you're oriented to where we are. Okay, so just to kick us kind of off, just circle back to the slide you saw before, but now with a red arrow. This is where we are in time. Here we are in November, the development of the first scenario. It says public posting that, with your permission, will be next week. After you've had a chance to have you'd be the first eyes on this. And then, of course, the public posting comes with the opportunity for public comment as well. And thank you, Ms. Brasher and her team. They're leading, getting all that set up for us. So, cliffhanger is that's next week. Just always like to recycle back to the charges and parameters, just so you know that we're being true to what you asked us to do. Obviously, we are creating attendance zones for the opening of 2 new schools, addressing the capacity concerns of both Range and other campuses, maximizing the utilization of our current campuses to the extent possible, and ultimately planning for future growth. And that's where the forecasts that we don't have in hand yet, that you'll see in future models, will show the, I'll say consequences. Consequences can be positive. The consequence of some of the scenarios we will see 5 and 10 years out. So that'll, and I don't have those tonight. I apologize that we haven't got those back yet. They are coming. Parameters, obviously, community input, as well as department input. We have met as internal department teams, putting eyes on all of these plans, recommending attendance zones that help to balance demographics to the best of our ability, prioritizing student programs, safety, transportation, all of the logistics around that, minimizing the use of portables to the extent possible, recognizing that's, again, not always possible, and then being transparent with our plans for the future. Commitment to draft the zones that help us stay healthy financially and for academic achievement for 10 years. Minimizing future attendance change for the same students. As you're going to see, it's not possible to do that for everybody, but minimize is the key word there. Allow us to best serve the needs of our students and families and be great stewards of district resources. So just as a reminder on the topic of community involvement, there are 4 ways for the community to stay involved in this process. We do have the community-wide survey that has opened and closed, and you'll see some snippets from what we heard from our survey respondents so far. We have our 7 town hall meetings that are scheduled and run from November to January, and one of the slides towards the end have those dates listed, but they're also published online. The comment that I talked about earlier, or you can look at the maps online, make comment, and then our parent committee, which we're really excited, meets for the first time this week. They meet Thursday night. It's 1 representative from every campus. They apply online via a form, and again, I'll thank Ms. Harris for all her hard work in facilitating that process. And we did a good old-fashioned big clear jar of papers and reached in and stirred it up and pulled out names and contacted those folks, and we're very excited. A lot of fresh faces, names we haven't heard of before, but every response we got back was thank you for the opportunity, very excited. So Thursday's going to be a big night for us. We're really pumped about that. And they will be reminded they're not developing the zones, but they are listening to input that you give us and other input we collect as we go. And then they'll meet 2 times, November 6th and 28th, and then again on the 15th. Okay, let's talk about the survey. Thank you to Mr. Vanacek for facilitating the survey process for us. Got 2,121 individuals completing the survey. That's a pretty good response. What you see here is we asked them to basically select the top 3 most important priorities. And what we heard, not surprisingly, is campus safety. We know that as campuses get big and overcrowded, safety becomes a concern. Proximity to home, that's a theme you'll see again in a few slides. And then the academic programs and student academic achievement. They closely followed by social connections and friend groups. Again, not surprises there, but certainly good to hear that directly from the folks that it impacts the most, that what we assume they would prioritize that they did. We asked, should we, given that we can't do everything, for us balance student numbers or keep student cohort groups together? And of course, the answer is both, right? So we'll do our very best to do both. That takes a little bit of extra work and causes us to look at things from all angles, but we'll commit to doing that on behalf of our citizens. And then we asked if you were to be rezoned, and that's why in case of rezoning, I realize that might be misread as, well, you're not going to rezone? Yeah, we're rezoning. But in case your family is rezoned, what would you need from the school district? Early communication and details about the new school was the top response. And I think that's something we've done well in the past and will continue to do. Orientation events, touring the new school, assistance with transportation, and of course, peer transition programs like buddy systems. Some of our little bitty guys, it's a real overwhelming thing to think about going to a brand new school. So we've done really super well with these in the past, and I know we'll make it proud again. The anecdotal comments, the biggest responses were, most frequent things that were talked about were distance and transportation. Right? We remember that for those that were involved with this when we did this a few years ago. A lot of concern how far away a school is from where I live. We know we'll have plenty of chances to talk about that again. Social impact, the number of times you get rezoned, separation from friends, and then equity of resources, concerns about fair distribution of resources, academic programs, and demographics. We feel we can handle these concerns really, really well, but again, it was very good to hear from our respondents that these were things that they're concerned about. So we know to make sure that we're very conscientious of that in our work. Okay, so the moment you really came to talk about, which is the proposed zones. So again, you have a clearer map. It should say elementary school 1A. So one thing you'll see as we do iterations of zoning, they'll have code names. 1A is, so you'll see middle school 1A and elementary school 1A tonight. If revisions are made that are not just minor boundary or a few things that are minor, we may keep it as 1A. If it doesn't affect that, there's a rethinking of a line, it'll become 1B, 1C, etc. Right? So we had 9 elementary renditions last time, 5 middle school renditions. And a reminder, you won't see a high school 1A, because we're not talking high school at all in this conversation. So what you see in the charts, I think tells the story really well. And if you prefer raw numbers to charts, you can flip the page and see the tables that are associated there. They're the numbers that are in the charts. The way to understand the chart is what you see in blue is today. What you see in red is what the numbers would look like with the projected rezoning. Cautionary tale when we start showing numbers. One of my favorite quotes is when you're doing forecasting statistics, you can say, these numbers are wrong, but they're useful, right? And that's a valid comment because we can't predict to that level of certainty exactly how many there were. So these are rezoning scenarios as if we were rezoning today's students, which is a close approximation of what it will be next year. So bear in mind that if you see a number change, 441 from the 446 and some other slide, don't let that trip you up. That's just their close approximation using today's students. Okay? So you can see in this model, if you just kind of scan across our elementary schools, I won't use the word significant, a pattern of either stabilized or lowering of enrollment for the schools, specifically Wolf Ranch, Williams, Carver have the biggest change in their enrollment numbers. Really the only school that I see that goes up is Frost, and that's a good thing. San Diego, that's a good thing. We have capacity there. When you look at the percent utilized chart, that number represents of the capacity of that whole building, how much of it are we using for the core function of teaching and learning. Okay? And then The next slide shows what the low socioeconomic makeup of the school changes. Again, it's if today's students were rezoned, so these numbers will shift a little, but it's a close approximation. And you can see basically a stable chart, not many changes happen, Wolf Ranch changes a little bit. And then of course elementary school 12 opens with a significantly high socioeconomic population. And you see the charts of the area, and we can talk a little bit about that. Okay? So I'm going to quickly just flash to the numbers just so you can see that you wanted to refer to the numbers in the chart you have it here. And then talk about the individual areas that are impacted. Okay? I would invite you to throw your hand up, make a noise, because if I'm looking up here, I might not see you, but I'm happy to stop and take questions anytime, knowing that there's a lot of information coming at you. Okay? What you see on the screen here is the proposed new zone for elementary school 12. It's primarily made up of what is currently the easternmost part of the Williams zone and a little bit of the Cooper zone. What you can't see, it's kind of hard to represent on slides, is when I show you the middle school 5 zone, it looks very, very similar, and that's for continuity of feeder pattern. Yeah, continuity of feeder pattern.
Do you want to explain that the blue lines represent
Yes,
the
sorry.
zones and the colors of the new?
Thank you, Wes. Yeah, the blue lines and the blue words on the slide are current zone boundaries and current zone names. So if you see, for example, if you see the orange, which represents Cooper, that is now yellow, but inside of that line, that's how you see that bleed over. That's where you know where the new addresses are. If that makes sense. Okay. Another heavily impacted area, the way to read these as well, if you look at the tiny map in the corner and where the red circle is, it orients you to where what you're seeing in the zoom in. So this is the area in the far west-south part of the school district, west of Wolf Ranch Elementary School. This area that you see in green is currently San Gabriel Elementary School, or Wolf Ranch Elementary School, being rezoned to San Gabriel Elementary School. Give or take 230 students if you used today's students. And when we show a map where the most active and future growth is happening in the district, it's in this area right here. Lots of growth. If you recall, if you're part of this process, a couple of years ago, we didn't have a traffic light there, so we really couldn't zone these students safely to San Gabriel as we hope. The traffic light is in design and will be delivered next summer. So we feel confident that this is a good and safe move for these students. Okay. This map represents, you can see where the circle is. This is north of Wolf Ranch. And in the far east side of that, the blue lines, once again, as was pointed out, are the current zones. What you see in, I'm going to call it light green, and Lindsay's going to laugh at me because I don't do colors well, is currently in the Wolf Ranch zone and would be rezoned to Frost. That's give or take 130 students and growing. It's primarily apartments, some brownstone apartments in that arena. If you look at the watermelon peachish color that's still Wolf Ranch to the left, that represents give or take 80 to 90 current students that would continue to go to Wolf Ranch. So the majority of students on that side of Rivery Drive would be basically in multifamily going to Frost. That helps Frost a lot. Easy transportation route for us as well. Okay. This one, remember when I said we would do our very best not to rezone families more than once? This is where we have to talk about how we have to rezone families more than once from the last move. When we were giving Williams the relief that it needed last zoning, it helped us to move some students into the Carver zone. But now that we're opening 12, we're moving back the opposite direction, right? And kind of understand we're counterclockwise, now we're going clockwise, now we're going counterclockwise. So the students are in that upper area. You can see the neighborhoods of Pinnacle, Maple Creek, West Haven, Overlook Ridge. Give or take 200 students to Williams, and
Back to
Williams, correct. We are working on, and thanks to the team who's been really digging in on this with me, is working on ways to really enhance what we've always called grandfathering, where we've had parameters around if you're a rising fifth grader or you have a sister. We're going to be likely be quite a bit more open to letting students, especially in scenarios like this where they were just rezoned. So families that are listening are worried about that. Rest assured, we're working really hard to make sure that if your little one was in first grade and we just moved them, we're really wanting you to have the option not to move right back. And we know how that can be pretty rough. We put this map together because it helps illustrate something that we don't talk about a lot, but it's a hypothetical Parkside map. So you can see where we are in space there. You'll see that little Parkside Elementary in the bottom, or excuse me, far left of the screen. That elementary school is not there. The land is there, it's platted, it's ready to go. We just have not built it yet. When we do, a likely zone will look like what you see in teal here. Roughly 400 students of today's students. But when you look over to the same exact map on the right, and you see all that bright green and yellow, that is active development. We know that when we do build that school, it'll open with a lot more than that number of students, and Wolf Ranch is going to need that relief again in the future. So just to kind of keep in mind, even though we're rezoning the current schools for capacity purposes, we have an eye on what our next move would really need to be if it comes to that for building school. Can't tell you how many years from now. Actually, when we get our projections, and I mean, we'll show you those at the next workshop, might be a little easier to tell you what that would be. Okay. So just a quick note on the numbers. When you see jumps in campuses like Pearl, that's not a real change in Pearl. That's basically when you do rezoning software, it puts all the pre-K kids back there, and the dual language kids back there. And so those numbers don't change. It can't account for our program placements. So that's what's happening with pre-K and dual language in campuses like those. So if you see a number that looks anomalous, just let me know and I'll let you know how that is happening. Whew. Okay, that's elementary. I'm going to pause and listen for what feedback you might have.
So one question, I have several questions, and I guess my first question is, several questions.
Yeah, you still hold it.
speak right
Yeah.
into it.
My first question is looking at frost in that zone right there. And what I think I heard you say was the area that's awfully pretty dry, that going through there, that's 130 students. Is that 130 students right now?
Right now.
That are in that area?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And so those people, those students would go to Frost?
To Frost, yes, ma'am.
Are there any other efforts? Because when we're looking at, and if we know what's going on in Austin right now, because of low numbers in their schools, are we looking at anything else in order to enrich the capacity of Frost?
We could certainly draft a few additional iterations that would draw from other areas, but let me go back to the big map and kind of show what's obvious to all of us that talk about this stuff all the time. I know you guys see it too, but you see where Village McCoy and Cross are all sort of right there together,
Yes.
and Cooper. Those are all really small population schools already. It's difficult to take students from that area, that's actually the most convenient area to pull students into Frost because it's adjacent, but it doesn't serve any purposes Wolf Ranch, and again, Village would be the same. Wolf Ranch and Ford would make a lot of sense. So we could, look at some other areas in Wolf Ranch zone and put some iterations together.
Ms. Malden, may I have the mic?
Sure.
That's a part of that. The size of the schools on the west side is something that we're all around this table tracking pretty closely to make sure we don't have significantly under-enrolled schools, because honestly, that's not very cost-effective to the school district, and it ends up hurting the bottom line, which ends up affecting our ability to increase compensation. So that being said, last year when we weren't even talking about rezoning, we were considering different programming for Frost Elementary School. As we enter an era of school choice, I think we have to think about elements of choice within our, especially our elementary schools. That's a totally different workshop conversation than what we're having right now. Second thing is, if you look at the Ford Elementary Zone, we are also predicting that growth is going to take place in that area. And once growth happens in that area, you can see the elementary schools adjacent to Ford, which include Village, McCoy, and Frost would need some shifting to accommodate an overpopulation of Ford.
I guess the one thing that really sticks out is, of course, elementary 12, and looking at the demographics of that school. I think that that's going to be a real challenge to open a school with 82%. I think that that's really hard. I think that that's a real hard, I'm just being totally honest. I think that that's a real hard leap for families to say, yeah, I'm okay to do that. I think that if we end up looking at this and that sort of numbers, I don't know what that, I think that there's going to have to be some real consideration there. I think that's a hard one. I think this is incredibly difficult to feel good about that situation. I'm also aware of where that is in that area. Yes, there is some growth out towards Jonah, and that may change. I don't know what's going to go in there. That may help. But looking at this today, I see that as being really, really challenging.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying it, and we've heard that since.
Yeah. And the last thing would be looking at, I drove out to, because I didn't know where Parkside was, to tell you the truth. And I didn't know where Mayfield ran, so I drove out there this morning before tonight. And my question is, looking at that area, on the right-hand side when you're coming from town, is that all of our school district, or is that part of it Leander? Because they are built out, and so are some of the kids from Parkside already coming to GISD schools? And so where are they going to school now?
Wolf Ranch. Wolf Ranch. Yeah. Yeah, it's there's a bridge that's going to connect everything in the future, and like thoroughfare through there easier as well.
In the next 18 months.
18 months. Yeah. So yeah, that's where they go.
Yes, it's good.
Yeah, the first part. Yes. Mayfield Ranch puts them in there.
And where does Mayfield Ranch go?
Partly, so both of those neighborhoods partly go to Leander.
Okay, Mayfield Ranch goes to Leander.
Yeah.
Does
Yeah.
all of Parkside go to GISD?
No.
Not all.
Not all of it.
Okay.
Parkside on the river is GISD.
It's split, and Leander has an elementary school named Parkside
Yeah.
Elementary
They beat us to the name.
in the neighborhood, yeah.
That's all my questions.
So thank you for those questions. Okay, moving on to middle school. Oh, Rachel. Ms. Garrett?
Yeah, I'll thank you, Landon, for all the work to
You're welcome.
get all this data and information in front of us. And just want to echo what Ms. Malden said around making sure we're looking at that new elementary school and setting them up well. And I don't
keep trying.
But it relates to some of our earlier conversation in this meeting around making sure those schools are supported, and I think if we need to differently support them, that makes sense. And I think it's clear from this map that, you know, I'm besides being a trustee, I also am a parent with elementary school students and understand what it feels like. And I know parents are going to look at this, and when there's a change for them, they're going to have to process through it. So I'm really glad we're doing the town hall meetings. I think that'll be helpful. And I appreciate how you have, you know, tried to keep and group kids together, whether that be neighbors or, you know, kids that will at least know each other, even if they're moving to a different school. So thank you for that, and I look forward to hearing what we learn from the community.
Thank you for that, yeah. We'll continue to take this input and make modifications where we can find it. Okay, the middle school map is a separate packet that you have. So it reads the same, so explanation is the same. Blue is today, red is projected, and again, it's today's kids, it's the kids we have in school right now. So, there we go. So you can see that opening elementary school 5 is the priority. We also did a little bit of work on the Minold zone. It's a very awkwardly shaped and long zone. And then bringing the students at Tippett, Wagner, and Forbes to a little bit of a balance and helping relieve some of the pressure that we already are feeling at Tippett, which is crowded. Utilization, numbers look the same there. And then if you look at the socioeconomic makeup of our middle schools post rezoning by this scenario, the numbers are there. Middle school 5 also has that the same or similar impact to what you were describing, because of location. Okay. So let's talk about the areas that are impacted. So that should look familiar, practically the same as the elementary 12 zone. You get most of the students that are coming from Wagner zone currently and from Forbes zones that are making up that school. So the orange line, where we're looking at the blue and blue text, now we're looking at orange and orange text. Those are the current middle school lines. So you see the orange line wiggling its way through, that splits what's currently Wagner and Forbes. Biggest change overall, outside of building an entirely new attendance zone, is a shift of Pearl students from Wagner, from Forbes and Tippett to Wagner. Okay, so the arrows should help, but you can see that the section inside the orange that is from Tippett to Wagner, and the section that's inside the orange at the top is from Forbes to Wagner. Basically, all Pearl students would attend Wagner Middle School. And then this little chart is the far east section of the Minold Middle School zone. As a crow flies and on the road is a pretty far distance from where the new Minold Middle School actually is. The opportunity for us to say you can go to middle school at a school is much, much closer. Is this what we're shooting for here? So again, following the orange line that you see represents the current Minold, and you can see where pink bleeds outside of orange. That's Minold students that would go to Tippett. And I wish that the colors were a little bit further apart, but the kind of tan that's above that pink, those are Forbes students, Minold students that would go to Forbes. That dividing line is Williamsburg. So those two groups are still zoned to go on to GHS. And so we would need to have conversations about, for the students that went to Tippett and then are zoned to go back to stay at GHS. It's very similar to last week. We make sure we do right by those families with transfer options and openness to that. Okay. Just a little note on Peter Patterson, and I'll stop for more questions. All of Williams Village, no. I seem to look at this every single time. I'm like, hold on a second, is that right? So I hope that this is right. But all Williams Elementary School 12 go to New Middle School 5. All of Pearl and Mitchell go to Wagner. Wolf Ranch, Tippett, Carver goes to Tippett, and some to Middle School 5. For GHS, McCoy goes to Forbes, then to GHS. Ford goes to Benolde, then to GHS. Frost goes to Forbes, and then some go to Benolde, and then some to GHS. Or some to Benolde, then all to GHS, excuse me. And then where we have students that end up going to both high schools, Cooper goes to both Forbes and Middle School 5, and then their zone is split between GHS and Eastview. That hasn't changed. San Gabriel currently goes to Benolde, and then some to GHS and Eastview. That hasn't changed. And then Villages is interesting because of the way it's broken up in that space. They go to both Benolde and Tippett, and they both go to GHS and EVHS. So that's the zone that's the most non-congruent. Okay, before we get into the what's next, let me pause and talk about, have me talk about middle school's proposed zone. Okay.
I know we're not talking about high school 4,
Right.
but
It's in the back of our minds.
In the back of our mind, yeah.
and how many of these are we going to completely destroy when we have to rezone for high schools in terms of middle school feeder patterns?
It's hard to say. We're trying to be very careful. The district team that meets and works on this are the sharpest people, and they're quick to point things out and ask those questions as well.
Because the timing's not going to allow students to start middle school, graduate a full cycle prior to, like, there's going to be a major shift.
There'll be an overlap, right, when they're in 8th grade. So as we've gone through this process and gotten closer and closer to this point, it's become more apparent that what middle school students are attending and how that middle school would be split potentially it is a down the road factor that we can't avoid. It's like we just see this iceberg off in the distance, right? So I just think that has to be the background of how this conversation evolves. Even looking at these maps, I don't think you can help yourself but wonder. So which one is the pure feeder to which high school, and which one is the split one? And then the wild card in there is what does development look like 3, 4, 5 years from now that changes all those different plans that we're thinking about. One thing to think about also is, as much as we don't want to rezone multiple times, students only have 3 years in middle school. So we may get to a point where it makes sense with a little bit of, I hate this term, but grandfathering in there, that we do a high school and middle school rezoning at the same time to try to keep pure feeders as well. But I think you're bringing up a good point. I think we have to start projecting what could high school look like if overlaid on top of this.
Landon, I don't have a question, but I have a comment.
Okay, so I don't have a question, but I do have a comment, because a lot of people don't think, those of us who have kids, don't have kids in the school. We totally empathize with those parents that are going to have to be going through this. So I'm glad we're doing all of this work and you're listening to them. But I do want everyone to know that, and poor Dr. Padaville's heard me say this multiple times, now we have built new schools. So where Hammerlin is used to be Williams, and the old McCoy is no longer there. But by the time my son got into middle school, he went to Pearl and Carver and Williams and McCoy. Every year or two, our neighborhood was used as a leveler, and we went to a different school. But it wasn't just us. It was the whole neighborhood and the peer group. So it is hard, but when school opens up, it's school. And as long as there's transportation and we're listening to the community. And I agree with Jim Malden. I really think we need to look at, as best we can, to level the demographics, because it gets real cattywampus at times. And the demographics of Georgetown have changed, and I know a lot of these parents are both working parents, but they're still qualifying. So there's just so many factors, and I appreciate all the work that you guys are doing.
Thank you, Ms. Black. Thank you for your comments. Definitely appreciate that.
Jen Scott.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Landon, on the demographics of the middle school, there's generally this year, the demographics have been pretty even between Wagner, Tippett, and Forbes, not with Benoni, and it's just been kind of an outlier. But you look at it now, and it's not. And it's significantly lower at Tippett now than, let's say, than at Wagner. And I'm just wondering, how did that happen?
The short answer is with Tippett's overcrowded right now. They're at capacity, and the opportunity to take the Pearl neighborhood and zone it to Williams is where the majority of that demographic shift happened. That area of Pearl, and that's why Forbes leveled out a little bit as well.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's just real quick preview where we are in time and space. And here we are at we have our zoning committee meeting Thursday night, online feedback and maps posted hopefully on Monday. Then our first and second town halls are next week. You're welcome and invited to please come and participate in those. Their first one's right back here at Wagner. Thank you, Ms. Holloway, for hosting us. And then all the way on the side of the San Diego room. And then our second parent committee meeting is December 4th. So for anyone interested in following along with the effort, thank you to our communications team for all the hard work they do on our website and keeping things up to date. There is a website dedicated to the attendance rezoning for 26-27. You can view our current attendance zones if you're, as Ms. Black pointed out, not everybody who's watching is a parent, but they may be curious. You type in your address, it'll tell you where your zones are. And if you were wanting to see some of the work we referenced about the previous attendance zone efforts, that work is still published online for you to see as well. But ultimately, the 26-27 rezoning work is where you go to find information with dates. Okay, one last chance to clarify questions.
Trustees, really appreciate your feedback. I appreciate the team taking notes on every question you ask and every point of input. So we will take into account as we think about what does future drafts look like. And then of course we'll report to you what our parents tell us on Thursday night as well as about this current iteration. And we'll share a little bit about what our trustees said to them as well. This concludes the board workshop. Thank you and have a great evening.